Today, the fourth and the last part of the series is breaking all barriers of age and gender. This will feature architect Seja Sudhakaran and architect Khushbu Dauda of Studio Emergence with their presentation, Macro to Micro, Parametric Design. A small reminder to all participants, we can make this webinar as interactive as possible. Our presenters will be happy to respond to your questions after their presentation. Do send in or punch in your questions and we will collate them as soon as the presentation is over. But before that, let me tell you something about our two young ladies today. Studio Emergence was founded by the duo architect Seja Sudhakaran and architect Khushbu Dauda, both sharing the passions of geometry and design and parametric design. Their design process seeks to bridge the gap between material properties, context, and digital techniques. Over to Studio Emergence, Seja and Khushbu.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you for inviting us.
Hi.
So I'll start the presentation, Bhavya?
Yeah, you can
Okay,
go.
great. So I'll just share the screen, just a moment.
Thank you for your kind words, Conrad. And I see a lot of people from like a lot of architects, colleagues over here. Thank you for joining us. I would just actually address that today is World Labor Day. So I would just like to express solidarity to all the laborers who are so important to our profession. And I'm hoping they're all safe and sound right now. And yeah, we can start with the presentation. We would actually, today we are talking about collaborative practices and how in the future architecture can actually become a very different practice compared to what it was 2 decades ago. And how actually a lot of people from different kinds of genres of design can come together and actually create environments and spaces which can be much more enriching to each and every person, from the user to the architect, etc. So we just start the presentation with a very different project. I'm sure you're aware of this church. It's called the Sagrada Familia. It's the Basilica and the Church of Holy Family, and it is situated in Barcelona, Spain. The architect for this was Antonio Gaudi. He started this conceptualizing this church with the help of catenaries and the physical model, which was a cumbersome task, and he took a long time to actually come to a conclusion of the form. So if you see, there are these inverted catenaries which he has frozen in time, and he has inverted them to create these walled shapes which are beautiful to see. And a lot of these kind of processes were actually involved in the construction and design of this church. But if you're aware of this, after Antonio Gaudi died, for almost like a century, no one was able to construct this further. So it took a lot of these kind of new technologies like digital fabrication, 3D printing, to even visualize what, the Gaudi's drawing depicted. So if you go to the Sagrada Familia right now, in the basement, there's this whole workshop when you can actually imagine where there's 3D scanning, CNC milling, and a lot of other techniques through which these drawings are becoming the reality now. So these are some of the images which we see right now. And there's an architect called Jordi Fowley who is commissioned for this project. So what we can actually learn from this is, like with these small experiments, Gaudi actually went through lengths to create that structure. What we can actually learn from it is understand what that structure is, why it is used in that manner, why it is the strongest form of arch, and what we can do is extract the algorithm from nature and actually use to create structures like this. This is an example from a workshop we did with some students, and this is one like a student's work. Similar catenary, but it is in an inverted form in a different modern fashion. And you can, of course, fabricate it. You do need these kind of new fabrication tools to actually construct it, even visualize it as for the physical modeling. we all know how important physical models are to architecture and to design. So that becomes really important. And where we need actually interventions in our existing workflow is to actually get people from different, plethoras of experts. So be it biohackers or engineers or technical experts, robotic experts. So when all of these people are combined, even the contractors, so they do give a lot of input. Usually what happens is a design to fabrication to your actual building process is a very linear process. So whenever there is, say, a mistake or even, like a drawback from one of these parts, you cannot really go back to the design board because it becomes a very linear process. What we are trying to, say here is when it becomes a feedback loop, when you understand what, how the material is, when you understand what the contractor wants to tell you, and you have a very dynamic design, and it's not very difficult for you to, make changes in your existing form or your base design, then only your, project will become a little more enriched with a lot of data with all of these feedback loops. Over to Sija.
So as Khushbu was saying, the main three verticals for us has always been ideate, implement, and educate. So what we do is it audible? Hello?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So what we do is in the design studio, we design projects, and then we are very clear about how we are working with material knowledge and material explorations. And every time there is this feedback loop that we have between the two. So anytime there is an issue with the materials and how we are working around with it, we go back to the drawing board and change certain things in that. And as far as education and research goes, we do a lot of research, as Khushbu had spoken about, with students all across India. We conduct workshops, and the main goal of the workshop is not just to give them tools for parametricism, but also to show them how we can implement all of the tools that they've learned in the real world scenario, because the Indian context is not similar to anywhere else in the world. We need to actually adapt and understand what the Indian context looks like for us. So one of the major things that whenever we talk about is something that BIM does for us. So everybody now in the architecture industry is pretty fairly acquainted with BIM. And since the last 20 to 15 to 20 years, people have been really working with building information modeling. And actually parametric design is not new. It's like a subset of that. So if you actually use parameters to design, then what we can do is we can enrich our BIM models even further and take it to the next level. So the need of the hour today and what the society that we live in, everybody is only constantly thinking about ways to cut time and make ourselves more and more efficient. So what we strive with our effort and in the practice is to make it more and more collaborative, make it more and more time friendly, so that we're not wasting a lot of these resources that we have with us. We feel that parametric design approach is the way that would be a stepping stone for collaborative practices, because each one has their own expertise that they bring to the table. So what we have here is a very conventional workflow. So to all the stalwarts out there looking at this webinar, they already know what I'm talking about. But to the young generation, to people who still struggle when something starts across, there are certain problems areas that we have discovered during our time of working, and which has been like this. So whenever we start designing, there are these three phases that we go through generally, which is the schematic phase, the design development, and the working drawing. So what happens generally is that during the schematic phase, we need to make a lot of iterations. And every time we have to make so many iterations, we go to the drawing board, then we make a static model, and then we keep trying to make more iterations, because ultimately the client wants more designs. And that's usually the problem, because generally we need to generate more and more options. And this whole need for more options actually puts a time lag on our particular process, and the man-hour calculation goes for a toss. Similarly, when we come to the working drawing stage, what happens is that we cannot really use this model that we've developed with a lot of vigor, because this model doesn't give us any kind of information. So what we have thought is that this is the particular area where we need certain kind of intervention, which is where we personally in our practice believe that parametric modeling softwares help. So this software can be anything, which is like Rhinoceros, Grasshopper. It can be Revit, Dynamo. So there are countless numbers that we can go in detail, but then the fact remains that anything, a software that's going to help you extract information is going to help you in this process to cut down the man-hours specifically and also to create interesting designs. So here what happens the moment we insert something like this here, the positive is that not only can you make more iterations very easily, but the model itself gives you enough information to go to your working drawing stage without going back to the drawing board. So there is some insertion that's possible in this particular level. So similarly, what we do at the studio is also to understand different types of workflows and what all interventions are possible, and to actually get out of the whole archaic way of working and use computation. It's a tool for you. This is not going to teach you design. It's not going to do anything design based unless you know what to do with it. But this is a computational tool that we should use to actually make our life and processes better. So we're just going to run through a couple of projects today to just show what are the different scales where this kind of application is possible, what are the different types of scale where we can actually implement all of these techniques. So the first project that I would like to introduce is a metro station, which is in Mumbai. So this metro station is an upcoming Mumbai metro station for Line 7 for Andheri. So we were fortunate enough to win the design for this particular station. So here I'll just briefly explain what were the parameters we used to design this particular form. So when we studied the urban fabric in this particular space, we realized that an elevated rail system is going to just be inserted in the existing fabric, and this is an extremely crowded area. So what happens is that the residences who are living across the station will always have a breach of their privacy. So for us, it almost became like the user of the station was not the primary goal for us in design. It was the guy who was living outside the station, who has a house which is adjoining the station. So the entire design process actually was governed by this one singular parameter, wherein we realized that we can have these openings and apertures that are seen in the structure, and based on the adjoining building, we can change the size of this opening. So if there is a residential building next to it, then the size of the opening becomes very small. Whereas if there is a road which comes perpendicular to this particular structure, then the size becomes extremely big. So based on that, we could create an entire form and pattern wherein we could work the entire facade system out of that. This is a view of the structure and the side elevation of how it looks like. Similarly, when we talk about, like, this is another station that we did in Mumbai itself. So here again, we use the parameter of context. So if you see, the station completely differs in form, even though the parameters were the same, because the context in this particular case was not buildings, it was trees. So we wanted the form to seamlessly fit into the trees around the structure. And what we did was use one of the curves and the beams that the MMRDA had given us, and then start twist it such that it could make a formation of a branching pattern of a tree. And then we use light and solar analysis and wind analysis to understand which surfaces have to be opaque, which surfaces have to be translucent, and the entire play of this particular facade was formed in this manner, which we can see very clearly in this slide. Similarly, in an urban context, we can also go at a slightly smaller scale and understand what is possible and how you can make the urban spaces in your city better. So Khushbu can brief you on that.
So in this context, similar to what Sija just showed in the metro, this again, what we did was create this whole steel sculpture come landscape kind of an object in the pavement. So basically this property belongs to BMC, it belongs to the public, but it is adjoining this property, which is like a building redevelopment building. So what we did was we approached this builder and we asked that if we can, enhance this pathway, it will benefit both the parties, right? The public as well as the builder. So we got the finance from there. And what we see is actually there's this crossroad in Dadar, which is a very crowded area. So this pathway was actually really abused and, used in different forms. There used to be bikes parked over there and people used to, find it difficult to walk or sit over there. So what we did was create this whole divide between the road and the pavement with the help of this structure, which becomes like a railing on one side and it becomes landscape patch, and then it goes on to become a seat. So this seat is right now, like it was already being used by senior citizens to actually, flock in the evening. So we wanted to still have that intact. And if you see this, how it was built, it was actually built with these steel rods, which was, everything was done on site. And we just gave the Z-axis dimensions to the contractor on site. In fact, we worked with this contractor for the first time, and it was not very difficult because we have these digital tools which actually gives us very accurate data of where, all the placements and all the dimensions should be like. In fact, there was a lot of changes during the process because there were a lot of services. There was a newspaper vendor over there who wanted some storage. Then some senior citizens requested to extend the seat. So it was a lot of, back and forth that happened. And we still managed to create this whole dynamic workflow to actually finish this project in time, because we didn't even, have a lot of time we couldn't work 24/7 on site. It was a very tight site. So having digital tools to actually, be able to go back and forth and not waste any more time on the design board is very important when it comes to, very tight projects like this. So this was how it looks like at the end. And it has services and everything in place. So this was the previous one was a very material-driven material optimization project where we actually understood how much steel bends, etc. And what we want to also say that it's not just material, exploration that we can do. We can also do actually understand what happens in nature, because a lot of other panelists have also spoken about it, but we also want to touch upon the fact that it is one of the most important tools we have. We just observe a lot of these ant colonies, and we usually, are always curious about how these ants manage to always go in these straight lines. And when you actually go into the detail of why they do that, it's much more fascinating, because even if, they start with being really scattered, they end up finding the shortest path to the point A to point B via pheromones. So even if you keep like an obstacle in middle, they'll end up, finding the best route out of there. So in fact, it is one of the most commonly used algorithms. Even Google Maps uses it. So Fry Otto was actually one of the pioneers of understanding how we can use minimal pathways, and he had taken this experiment called woolly threads, where you must have already seen how this looks like. And when you connect a lot of points, this algorithm actually kind of gives you what the shortest path connecting everything looks like. So what we did here was actually take a micro-urban context. This is Girgaon Chowpatty. What we try to understand is how you actually can connect all these different points, which are high-density points, to create like an urban intervention on the beach, which you will be able to create traces for, which we have done currently, and which the traces can be used to, have different seats, different shops, and other functions. So this was the final output. And what we proposed there was like a hybrid seat, which on which people can sit, play, have a little bit of fun, even like play in the sand, and still have a colorful installation in the middle of the beach. So this was a proposal. And we actually ended up, proposing this to Kansai Nerolac because it's a colorful installation, and they actually accepted it. And we are doing this in we actually did this in Visakhapatnam. So this is Kursura Museum, the submarine, just opposite the submarine museum. It's called the TU Aircraft Museum. It's one of the most visited places in Visakhapatnam. If you have been there, it's called the RK Beach, on which this museum sits at. And RK Beach is called the Marine Drive of Visakhapatnam. And it's one of the most, like the maximum amount of tourists actually visit this place. So they wanted to create some surprise element outside the museum, right, where people can sit, interact, take some pictures. So this hybrid seat acts as one of those. We have studied a lot of sections and actually created this with all these different 120 sections actually were created and painted in a gradient form to create this. And it goes from a bench to a seat to a lounger. And in the end, it's just a fun structure. It was also imperative for the structure to be transparent. You can see how transparent the structure is, so that you don't obstruct the view of the museum. And it is loved by the children and one and all. Of course, then we go to Pineskin, which is one of our very initial research projects. So we were researching on how we can actually do solar optimization for a facade where you can actually control how much sunlight or radiation is coming inside the building. And of course, we wanted to test the strength of how wood can be used for construction. So this was a sine curve which we optimized such that it is self-standing. And you can see in the video how the point is the sun, and all the modules are actually facing the sun. And we optimize that in such a way using this plugin called Ladybug for Grasshopper, such that during the summers, minimum amount of sunlight goes in, and during the winters, maximum amount of sunlight goes in the house. So this is how it looks like, and it and the end result is a very dynamic looking structure. And all these sections are laser cut differently, which is digital fabrication, and it gives you an illusion of a dynamic form. This is again cost effective. And of course, the scalability of the module, like, it can become an art installation in a small, like a interior space, and it can also become a facade for a larger commercial space. So you can explore digital tools to even create, a fabrication with manual techniques. So we've just included that to say that it can be very, very simple and still create a lot of impact. So this was for a brand to create like a wave form to showcase that this building. So we are doing this building where, the building is sea facing. So to show that we have created this wave kind of a form. And the structure and the material for this was acrylic. Again, I come back to natural forms, and you must have seen how these birds form these different formations in the sky. So this is one of the examples is starlings. They are these tiny birds who actually create that kind of murmurations. And you saw that video where we have actually tried to mimic that in the digital tools. So you can actually learn a lot from nature. In fact, they do promote social distancing also. They won't come too close to each other. So that's how they actually create those kind of forms. So what we're doing is actually understanding that algorithm and putting it in an urban context. This is an art installation project we're doing in Chandigarh. I'm sure if you've been to Chandigarh, you must have seen the Matka Chowk. It's one of the most famous spots, very close to the Rose Garden. And so what we're trying to do over here is, it's in association with Nerolac Breathing Cities. So we want to, remind the city how important natural environments are. So this actually is an abstract for that. And what we've done is frozen the swarms in time and actually created this whole installation and with steel. And it's going to be like a dynamic form of installation. There are almost 300 modules, and each module will be different in height to create this illusion of a swarm around the matka. So yeah, it's going to be lit up at night to create the optimization.
So just like there are natural systems and emerging systems in nature, there's also something that we can do with form. So there are mathematics behind form optimization such that we can reduce the material usage in our project. We can actually optimize the form to increase the time efficiency of a project. So what certain aspects of the project that we look at is how can we optimize the form as a whole. So this one example that we have for that is a residential high-rise in Mumbai, which is the project has the sea view, and what we try to do is maximize the seaside view and the fact that there are roads on two sides of the project. So we try to put all the windows around this particular space. Once we started the massing, how we generally go about is that we have done the general massing. We look at how the podium structures are going to be like, where the windows are placed. And once that's done, we look at a BIM model. All the structural systems, etc., are already placed in the model. And we try to actually understand like a central part of it, like what the concept of this particular project was having dancing balconies. So we after getting the BIM model in place and having the structural system, what we started doing was started playing with cantilevers so that the budget doesn't go extremely high. The structural system remains pretty standard. And at the same time, we have a very different module when it comes to the entire design process. So these were the curves that we took to understand what the wave form would be like. And if you see, the balconies are shown in plan here, where there are a lot of balconies that are interchanging in shape. And all the balconies had similar area, which we actually formed because we couldn't have all the flats with different areas. For selling, that becomes a nightmare. So all the balconies, even though the shape changes, the area remained constant. And in that particular manner, we got this kind of a facade formation at the end of the day. So these are the kind of optimization of forms which can be really helpful when it comes to doing conventional buildings and still making it look and stand apart. This is another project that we're doing for Sugi developers in Mumbai. This here, the whole USP for the project was to create these balconies with facets and to make it almost like a pocket for green features inside. So the idea was to not have any feature that is going to extremely end up in losing FSI, because that's like the Bible, we can't lose any of that. So we had to keep the FSI in place. And then we had to actually make certain elements which were, so if you see the balcony here extends into a railing, and that is the kind of structure that we had for the entire facade. Similarly, for the same developer, we went into a similar kind of outlook and went into another building, which again had faceted balconies, but with a slight twist in planning. So creating a sort of design language for one particular office makes a lot of sense because all these projects are really close to each other. Similarly, this is another work in progress where we have chhajjas that go and convert into the balcony line like we had in another project, but this is in a more curvilinear fashion. We try to use a lot of these systems like Ladybug for Grasshopper, where we try to understand, like Khushbu already explained, how we do sunlight analysis in these projects to understand how the chhajja should be like, if the form can be optimized for the chhajja itself to make it better for the end user who's living inside the room. Karamba for Grasshopper, wherein we actually do some test loading of the structures if in case we are going with grid shell like forms. And these are some of the space explorations that we've done in form and space, wherein the structural system inside has been resolved pretty much, but the external facade can be changed with optimization of form. One last project in this particular space would be the K. Raheja Platinum. The design architects for this was IAG consultants from Mumbai. And we were the parametric design consultants. We designed this particular canopy on the bottom, and then we did optimization of form for the external cladding of Korean. So if you see this whole yellow bit, that's the space we worked upon. I won't go very much into detail of what all it entailed, but the fact was that whatever, these were the fabrication drawings they were getting from vendors, but the architects were not extremely happy with how it was shaping out to be. So what we majorly did was realize the architect's dream, but at the same time made sure that the cost was in control. Because like very fairly, what happens is that a 2D panel, which is like completely flat, and there is a 3D panel, which is completely double side curved. The double side curve costs 3 times the flat one. So the cost of the budget goes really high. So we had to optimize the entire form to achieve that. So parametric design optimization doesn't necessarily mean fancy forms. It's also time management, material management, and cost optimization. Here are some of the photographs of the project, the canopy, and this is the finished project. This another application in an interior site, which now we can understand the scalability of the entire thing. So we were talking about a facade, and now we are talking about an interior site, which we did again in collaboration with a studio called Studio Back in Black. This is in Bandra. The club is called Vortex West. So the brief from the client was pretty different. It was just one liner which said that I want my club to look like a vortex. So we were in a mess because once we entered the site, it looked like this with a lot of columns, beams, HVAC structures. So what we decided was, the moment we started it, we decided to actually put like an envelope inside and check, can we create a tunnel effect inside this so that it almost looks like everything is going and culminating into one space inside. So once we started the form optimization, checking what all is possible, this was the kind of form that we came up to. Every single panel here is different. If you see, this is a side photograph. Every single panel is different. Every single panel has been separately CNC milled, and then gotten on site. Everything had to be numbered and then fitted accordingly. So the contractor here was not any specialist. We just had to train him for the first 3 panels, and then we used to go to site maybe once in 4-5 days to check how many panels he's done, because the moment you empower them, they are really capable of taking it forward and doing it, and they use it for their next projects as well. This again is a video that shows the entire space in action. We also collaborated with a lighting designer here, and all of these portals were connected to each other with a daisy chain, and all of these lights were interconnected. And also the lights were connected to the sound. So the moment the music was playing, like if there's EDM playing in the club, then the lights would also automate accordingly. So this was an extremely interesting project because we were actually collaborating with so many people on different levels, and be it designers, be it lighting designers, and then parametric architects ourselves. Similarly, in contextual iterations, there are office spaces that can be done across, which Khushbu will explain.
So again, just trying to understand the brief and how you can actually translate into the final form in the context is very important. So we wanted this office space to be, fluidic. They wanted to represent it like a fluid kind of a space in terms of the present and the future. So what we have done is, merged the inside and outside, and you can see we've done a very monochromatic form, and where, just the focus piece remains the reception wall, where, we've hidden the column and like a reception table is jutting out of it. And we have these seats which are very interesting. And on the upper level, what we have done is actually, everything to keep the cost down, what we have done is only we have played with one form. These were the options created for that, where that one installation actually, creates the drama in the space. And even if you want to, wrap it up and move it to another space, that can be done. So if, you notice there's just one piece of information, just one wall which is actually continuously changing for the options, and you have really good results. Yeah, and this project is actually completed is in Worli, and again you have like a wavy kind of a reception wall which actually creates the drama, and apart from that everything else is kept plain and simple. There's some elements here and there. Again, parametrics and interiors, what we did was, the client wanted the table to be facing northeast, which was not perpendicular to the wall. So what we did was actually create like a tessellated form, which actually enabled, the table to not look odd in the space. So it becomes a conversation starter also, and, still becomes a design element. This is how the render to reality looks like. And yeah, the render and the reality doesn't have much difference, because if you have good finishes, it looks very close to what your initial render looks like. So digital tools actually help in all of these kind of final explorations. And what it also does is, it gives you a very good tool to explore a design aspect in your head. So what you're doing is trying to understand how a smaller scale object looks like, or how a pavilion can look like. And if you see, this is like a Mobius structure which we have created into sections. So when you just scale it up into another context, it becomes something else. And when you are making it in a smaller object, it becomes something else. These are some of the drawings of it. So how one algorithm can be used to create different kind of spaces, that is also very fascinating to see. And so yeah, you saw some of those examples of a waffle, and how we have used actually all of these elements and all of these explorations in real projects. This is one of our penthouse projects which we have finished last year, and we have actually created like a solid surface bench, which is a continuous form of like a seat. You see there is a like a slit window out there. We wanted to create like a a katta kind of a space for the clients where they can sit with the family and enjoy like their evening tea. So what we have done is actually made sure that all these sections what we wanted to give to the client were explored, sitting in front of each other, leaning and looking outside the window. All of that is actually studied, and then we have created these smaller prototypes, which can be handheld and shown to the client. And after that, we actually make the exact same model in the real scale, and you can see the final result looks exactly the same as the renders. And this is how the final space looks like. And most of people who actually visit the space actually have asked about where it is done from, what material it is, etc. But it is basic thermoforming of solid surface. So material exploration, morphological exploration, all these parametric tools become like a very good tool for you, because it's not like they will be able to help you design better, but definitely it will help you translate what is there in your head better. So again, another morphological exploration. What we're trying to do is understand how different materials can be used to create more clean spaces, more cleanable surfaces, because right now I mean, the need of the hour is we have to create seats and in common areas and in lobby spaces which can be disinfected very easily. So right now we are exploring that in the studio. And these are some of the examples. For an urban context, we are also exploring, trying to create a material which will be concrete, but the aggregate will be in recycled plastic. So this is one of the examples of how that can be done. This is the modular seating. So same kind of formwork can be used for different things. Yeah, then this is a little more on the high-end interiors and commercial segment. So different colors, different textures, different materials for the surfaces.
So we closed the thing with the intervention that we did for Kochi. So we were actually invited last year to give an intervention for the entire Fort Kochi area. Ended up showing it to the mayor of Kochi, and this proposal was very well received. So one of the reasons so I'll just go through the whole briefly what this whole entire stretch entails. So this entire stretch is the promenade for Fort Kochi. And once we started the studies, similar in the other urban projects that we did a lot of mapping of the areas around it. We looked at the tourists that are going to come in, where the biennales are held, what are the public spaces like, what are the restaurants like. And once we did all of the study, we understood what kind of interventions are good and are going to be useful in that particular promenade. These are the existing photographs that were taken last year. So the beach was not kept very well. There are a lot of residents who take it up like as a challenge, and they do cleaning as such, but it doesn't really stay that way for a long time. So one of the biggest issues they are facing there is rejuvenation of the space, and there are not many signboards there. Public toilets are not available, and it's a pretty high-end area because there's a lot of tourists who visit this space from all around the world, especially with Biennale going on. It's very well received, this space. So the interventions that we had for the entire thing were divided into 3 zones. The zone 1 was the area with the Chinese fishing nets. So this is the attraction for Kochi. If you go to Kochi and you would definitely go into the Chinese nets, look at them actually fishing, and you can even go onto the barge and then be there in that activity. So what we decided was to have a pavilion in that particular space, have access roads and barges to these Chinese nets, because currently you have to go down into the sand, like there are a lot of stones there, and then somehow climb onto the boat. So it's a really tough ordeal for even us to do. So have these barges and the pavilion that can tie things together. This is the rendering of the pavilion that we had proposed, which was in the similar lines of the Chinese net. So it used minimal surfaces and how it looked in terms of the seafront. Similarly, the second zone that we had was to connect the pathway completely. So what we noticed when we went there and we walked on the pathway is that there are a lot of spaces where the pathway doesn't connect. So you have to go back to the road and get back onto the pathway later on. So here what we have proposed is that connect the entire promenade very clearly and clean, and have these zones where there will be cycling paths, there'll be walkway, there'll be seating zones. So this is the kind of seating that we were proposing for the entire area, which gives you the look of a marina. There is something to do with sails in that. And then there's also these footpaths designed which just intuitively tell you that this yellow band that we have going, it intuitively tells you that you're supposed to walk on this particular line because it acts like a marker for you. And similarly, the third zone was the Fort Kochi beach. This is a part 1 where a lot of these concerts are held. So we have this promenade sitting area for people where they can sit. And there's also some vendors that were situated around 500 meters from this space. So we thought of bringing them here and actually situating them here so that when concerts are held, there's a lot of people and their business is also promoted in that particular manner. This is another part of the beach where there is space for kids to play around and seating areas as well. So this was the entire proposal that we did. It was a much more detailed one. For the sake of the presentation, we've just concisely shown what all is possible with mapping studies and cartographies and just understanding what intervention is good for one space. So we actually, yeah, so this is the pavilion that we were speaking about. So this is it. So we close with this particular topic, and we hope that this was enriching and at least helpful in the field of parametrics. So Conrad, yeah, over to you.
Seja, Khushbu, I think this was really, really very impressive. Very, very impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Conrad.
Thank you, number one, for educating our generation.
Yeah, I'll have some water now.
Yes.
Yep. I want to make a general statement. We're extremely proud. I'm personally extremely proud of where your generation is moving to. Okay. And we can be hopeful of a paradigm shift in the built environment. But what I also see in your work is there is a great respect for the existing elements in whatever environment you're working in. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a few areas which I know everyone is going to be eager to know the various methods and software or thinking that goes into processes like these to get the best. We've seen a lot of hybrid work happening, something conventional along with some add-ons. What is also happening in the current education system is that this kind of thinking, where you design or you plan, you test it, you evaluate, and you get back to the design. Now, obviously with tools like digital tools, this does not create any waste. Your prototypes are not wasted. They can be tested till they are ready for prototype level. But there is a very, and all the new systems of education which are today, again, in all our big cities, in fact, nearly in all the other cities, but definitely in our big cities, they're using the same paradigm, the same methodology of teaching, of evaluating any reality. And if you want to explore something, you design, you imagine something, you test it, maybe you build it. If you have digital tools, you don't need to build, it's okay. You test it, build it if necessary, evaluate, and then return. So both two very major systems of education are following this. I'm just firing up a few questions. You can take them in any order.
Sure.
I'm wondering, when you come to your feedback loop, which is also one way of which software developers think today, is it possible, or does it really happen, that people like hands-on craftsmen and construction people are also included in this feedback loop?
Yes.
Do they become
yes.
Do they become redundant, or the human part and the human skill of construction workers and craftsmen also get included? I'm throwing you a few thoughts, so you can go.
Yeah. So I would address the last one because it's pretty much fresh for me. So it's so one of the things that we always stress on is that here in India, and we've been only practicing in India since after our masters, we came back to the country, and we've very much been focused on Indian context. And we have seen that a lot of labor has to be included in these processes that we do. So when we talk about testing something, we always make the models. It's never done digitally and then finish the testing. We do the testing, we make the most optimized model possible, but we don't just leave it at the digital model. We always go a step forward and actually use the tangible structure that we have to do. And at the same time, we make sure that we train our contractors. So as a studio ourselves, we have like 10 sets of contractors that we've already trained, and the contractors have been using these tools for their newer projects as well. So it's almost empowering them as well as the students. So when we talk about research, we make sure that they are included in our research as well, because even though we know the software as well, a carpenter would probably know wood better than any of us combined, because they know their craft so well. So to use their expertise, like a fabricator's expertise, when we talk about metal, whenever we work with any metal, so they teach us a lot in this particular symbiotic relationship. So we always include them in the process. They never becoming redundant. In fact, they are kind of empowered in this whole scheme. And I think software is, you had asked the other question about software, right?
Yeah, I think I will address that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've expressed concern about software actually taking the students away from, you know, your sketchbook or your physical model, but that's not the case when it comes to actually, you know, people who are into research and parametric architecture. In fact, you know, if you don't build a study model, it is very difficult to go further in the step, because it is very imperative for this process to go from analog to digital back to analog. Otherwise, it becomes like, you know, like a hurdle. So you will have to do that. And it becomes a very, you know, at the end, your design becomes much more functional. And also when you have to think about your material optimization, when you have to think about, you know, a lot of other factors while building, the cost, etc., you have to, of course, you know, make sure that you have your physical model. And when it comes to conceptual sketches, everyone has their own process of designing. So it depends on each person to person. We personally at the studio actually start with sketching, just, you know, ideate on paper about what we want to do, then bring in all the data, and then we start with computation. So it's not like, you know, you directly get on the computer. You don't really, because your instinct is still in sketching. It's the fastest output. So that's how we start with, and then go on to your data.
The only difference, like Khushbu was saying, the only tangible difference in the approach is that when you work with codes, everything is open. So time wastage is less. Like Conrad, you already touched on the fact that, you know, time wastage becomes less, because when you're exploring an option from A to Z becomes much easier for us, because you don't have to again go back to shifting everything, changing everything, because it's all open-ended code. So that is where this helps you. This tool might help you to explore more, because sometimes there is a fatigue also making models after models. So this fatigue doesn't come when you work with an open parametric system. That's probably the gain from it.
Yeah.
Okay, now before we get into the questions from the participants in this session,
yeah,
I'm inviting Milind to tell us something about the people who have supported this, the sponsors.
Sure.
So, Milind, can you give us a little audiovisual about the sponsors?
Yeah. So, extremely sorry about that audiovisual goof-ups which we had in the beginning. So, I'm instead of taking too long, I'll just quickly share a 1-minute audiovisual of our sponsor, so that we understand the product very well. Okay, here we go. So a quick background about our sponsor. HiBEC has been brand par excellence in the Indian context, almost 15 years in this field now. And they have distributors and support all over the country. So I think most of the interior architects and designers must be very well aware about this brand. So thank you so much, HiBEC. And now coming back to our presentation, Sija and Khushbu, you have been absolutely fabulous in your presentation. And exactly what we were looking at your particular firm when we called you as a role model for all these youngsters who have been aspiring to do something out of the box and into parametrics and fluid design. And you two girls have really made us proud by the way you have developed yourself into such a extraordinary organization in such a small age, I should say. And you are a real inspiration, not only for the youngsters, but especially for the girls and the ladies, whatever, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You.
So kudos to both.
When it comes to computation, it's usually men out there, so we are happy to be girls in computation.
So when I first saw your bio and I learned about you, I was totally flabbergasted, seeing these two young girls doing such a extraordinary work. So hats off to you two. And Sija and Khushbu, there are kind of questions that are coming from the most of our attendees.
Yes.
They are mostly based on, a lot of people want to know how you are using natural forms around in the nature into your parametric designs. That is one of the questions. And lot of questions are coming out of the materials that you use. So you did mention some thermo materials and stuff like that in your project for fluid designs. But do you have any particular set of preferences when you are working in kind of a fluid parametrics? And is fluid the only way for parametrics? Because a lot of people associate fluid with parametrics most of the time, So is that a myth, or it is like like a given? Because all your works also shows a lot of flowing geometry in your projects. So there are some things if you can address. I think a lot of youngsters want to know in this particular area.
So our forms are actually what we like. We like fluids. We like feminine structures. So that's what we work on. That's one of the reasons that it looks that way, but it's not necessary that it has to be. It's basically using parameters. So one of the projects that we showed, which was the K-Raja building that was designed by another architect, we literally just made it work in the budget that they had. So it's not necessary that it has to be fluidic. One point is that because of this tool, you can make it. So sometimes when you're using the tool, you inevitably end up making it, because if I'm using like a general CAD software, I probably won't be able to make such a complex form. So you can make simpler forms in this as well. But since you almost like have a powerhouse with you, and then you don't make like a pencil with it, like you make something bigger. So that's the reason people end up doing it. It's not like a necessity as such.
Yeah. And second question was about the material and the natural form from the nature.
Right. So materials are actually all the standard materials which we use, for interiors and exteriors and architecture. Actually, it's the same kind of materials which are available to us. We use plywood, we use MDF, metals. We work with solid surfaces. So it's the same kind of materials. It's just the application is different, and how we are using it with digital methods is different. That's the reason you find the designs to be different. It's at the end of the day just the design. It's not why the material looks. In fact, when you go close to it, you'll be surprised how different your solid surface looks like when it is in a fluid form. But it's the same kind of materials which we use. And when it comes to
R&D, like she's saying.
We have to. So in fact, you come back to the same thing like a feedback loop, where if you have noticed that the other urban intervention we did, we took steel sheets and we tried to twist it and see how much length of that, how much width of that steel sheet is bendable in how much curvature forms and how much radius. So when we found that out, we actually put that input in our digital model, and we were able to twist it in that much form, and we got the final form that way. So you understand the material, you try to really understand what is the, extent of the material that it can hold to, etc. So it's really imperative, in this case, to understand your material. Even wood, for example, you can actually create these tessellations in, through laser cut. You can actually, in plywood, you can create these laser cut joints and actually make wood also twistable. So
I think one of the webinars they had mentioned that the living joint, somebody had made a seat with a living joint.
Yeah.
So that's
so
the way you
it's
can
very
work
common
the
actually.
material.
Once you get into form finding the material, it becomes very easy for you to understand one or the other material also. You
and
can
probably you end up getting new materials also as and when you start working upon all these kind of.
That's true.
Every time you get some new.
Yeah.
Okay,
we have actually explored like a lot of new materials, like with resin and fiberglass and stuff, to help us to create certain forms when it is not possible to create those forms with some older ones. But there are some limitations, and it's still under process actually. So yeah.
Okay. And some more queries are in the range of, like when we talk about this collaborative designs with, working with different architects. And so as a young firm, what is it that you practice? I mean, how much component of your practice is collaborative and how much is on your own? And do you see a lot of firms like, established firms and young firms trying to collaborate with you because probably they can't pick up these kind of things so fast and they can't really focus, and expertise is not available in-house. So what is the kind of your practice like? How do you kind of collaborate with other architects or other firms or whatever? What is your...
So for us, it's I think Khushbu will agree, it's something around 50-50 currently. Like we do around half of our projects that we do are on a collaborative base because we actively pursue for that as well. So for the people who are looking for that, I think you should put a word out there. Because it's not just that you're gaining, like you're adding another consultant and the project cost goes high. That's not all that happens during collaborations. It also enriches the project. It will probably bring the whole cost of the project down. So there are a lot of justifications that we give to the clients when we do such a consortium of architects and then we present, because there's a lot of enriching that happens in this particular process. And to other people, it's like if you have a field that you're expert on, for us especially, we've been trying to concentrate on that so that we can do what we are good at all the time. Having said that, we do independent projects as well, but our focus generally lies there. Right?
So you see a great future for collaboration in your kind of a practice.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we do actually, and we have received a lot of support from a lot of architects we've worked with already, and we are working with them again and again because it becomes like it's the same thing what Sija is saying. We are good at something, and they are very good at their own work. So to enrich a project, at the end of the day, your client and your the principal architect, the parametric consultant, everyone is only trying to enrich the project and bring it to a level where it can be sustainable, it can be your form can be at the best it can, and a lot of material optimization can happen, which gets the cost down. A lot of these parameters go hand in hand when you have specialists on board. So that way it becomes win-win situation for everyone.
Yeah, and also you shared your design build practice, so you can actually execute your own design. So it's easier for people
so
to
when it
collaborate
comes to these, exactly. So when it comes to these fancy forms, you make something and something else comes. So again and again in the presentation we were saying, so this was the render, this was the reality. So usually our reality is better than our renders because we are not that good at renders. So we always tell our clients that it's going to look better than this, so don't worry. Because the product we work on, the renders we don't work on much.
So you absolutely guarantee the final product to the collaborator.
It's better, yes. It's going to be better than the render.
Correct.
So we only execute. It has to be done by somebody who knows, who knows their material, who works with it. So it's important.
So both of you did your bachelor's in Mumbai, and then you all, I think, went to Spain and did your master's. So one of our attendees is asking, how important is it to go and do a master's degree abroad and then come and do parametrics, or can we just start this kind of? So what is your advice to?
You need to have some education on it, because it changes the way you design. That I always say. Even the kids who come to work with us, the junior architects, we always tell them that, okay, you have to be malleable enough for me to break you, and then we have to realign a bit. So you have to learn. You don't have to learn abroad. There's a lot of courses in India. Like our own alumni, IES was doing a lot of workshops with us, and other architects also. So there are a lot of courses in India. I don't think it's important you go somewhere, because like we are at par with everything else around the world currently. So I don't think that's required, but learning would be needed. It's not something that you just learn a software and you go. And I'm sure that every single presenter who came here, every single architect has stressed on this, that the software is not equal to design intent. So we shouldn't mistake it that way.
Yeah, there's a design process that goes behind every software. Okay, I think that there are quite a few other questions, but we will also run out of time. So I think I'll hand it over back to Conrad, because we'll check out our audio visual also that's giving us problem today evening. But it was really nice interacting with you girls, and I'm sure you got miles and miles to go ahead. And the kind of responses and the chats that I'm getting in, people are absolutely flabbergasted with your designs. So all the best to you girls.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this platform. We've been extremely lucky to get these things, to get the word out there. Really, thank you for that.
The pleasure was mutual, actually. All our attendees are also very happy to see you.
Great.
Yeah, Conrad, can you take over? Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm going to ask you a very personal question.
Yes.
How were you all inspired to move this way? Who inspired you? What inspired you?
I will let Khushbu take this answer.
Yeah, so actually what inspired us is actually when we went for our masters, we actually learned that, your final output doesn't need to be in your head at the start. It can be a process, and, you are not the master architect that you will always, envision your final output at the start of the project. So process-based learning for this, we had to actually unlearn a lot of things which we did earlier. And, even during the practice, when we were practicing with other architects. So when we actually, broke our whole notion in our own heads of how design process should be like, how it can be process driven, how it can, you don't have to understand everything at once. We learned that this kind of process of design will be very interesting if we start off on our own and we, understand and get through all the hurdles of a professional practice. So that's how we ended up doing it. And when we came back, we just started teaching actually in the schools, and we used to take workshops on tools, different tools and stuff like that. When a lot of architects actually approached us to help them, with their workflows of how we can design in different ways. So that's how we started the practice, and it's been a good journey up till now. And hopefully this is just the start, because we're on the good side of the practice actually, and hopefully the next decade will be much better.
Thank you. Milind, do you have any other questions you want to put, or do we have time for anything, or is the audio visuals off now?
Good evening. I thank Architect Leena Nimbalkar, the chairperson of IIID Mumbai Regional Chapter, for giving me this opportunity to mentor this web series. My first concern was how to come out of this gloomy atmosphere present today with a ray of hope, something to look forward to. With this thought, the subject of parametric algorithm in design emerged, which ties various aspects of contributed design into a single thread in the most innovative way. I am happy that the series has brought this point home very well. This was possible with eminent and world-class speakers like Architect Amit Gupta, Architect Sushant Verma, Architect Shrija Sudhakaran, and Architect Khushbu Davda. And with digital handmade mantra, we were fortunate to have Architect Nuru Karim. I thank all the speakers for their valuable time and commitment. My sincere thanks to Architect Mujib and Rupa for their help. Along with webinar team, a big thank you to all architects, designers, and students to actively participate in this webinar. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
Good afternoon, friends. You all have enjoyed 3 days of webinars with us. Today we are on the last day. So I am here to say you hello and would like to share something from Chairperson's desk. Institute of Indian Interior Designers is founded in 1972, has 32 chapters in India and 1 in Dubai. Affiliated to APSIDA, Asia Pacific Space Designers Association, and member of IFI, International Federation of Interior Designers. Mumbai Regional Chapter is the largest chapter with around 900 members. Right from students, young designers, professionals, to corporates, manufacturers, traders, etc. All of you can become our members. I take liberty to refer Mumbai chapter as Bollywood of our industry, as many of the star performers nestle here. I am the first lady chairperson of Mumbai with focused dynamic leadership. My vision is to make brand IID happen, keeping legacy and tradition alive, in tune with our mission and objectives, which are collaborate, consolidate and expand by sharing of knowledge, experience and responsibilities. Professional practice, education and collaboration are 3 main verticals, keeping our members in the core. In this tenure, innovation is our buzzword with best take-home value. Even the worldwide pandemic conditions couldn't dampen our spirit. Past 9 months, we have curated and executed 13 activities, including this series of 4 webinars, and contributed in our own way to Corona Kuch Drive. IID Design Excellence Awards and NatCon are our flagship events, and Inkscape is own in-house magazine. We, managing committee members of IIID MRC, are blessed to have past presidents, vice presidents and chairmen as our icons, our gurus. Needless to say that we are walking on the path under the torchlight thrown by our president, architect Jabin Jacharias and NEC. Past president architect Rajesh Patel, mentor, has been instrumental in giving excellent shape to our brainchild first series of webinars. Architect Milind Pai, an IID member, is the coordinator. Past President Mr. Conrad Gonsalves is the moderator, and Architect Rupa Sabnis-Pinge from TFOD extended technical support. A big applaud to our panel of architects for making parametric algorithm in design accessible to us. I request you all to visit our website www.iiid.in. I repeat, website is www.iiid.in and become member, become part of our lively family. I, Chairperson Architect Leena Nimbalkar, is signing off now. Stay tuned with our future events. Thank you one and all.
Okay, friends, in conclusion, I'm tempted to say that that was a trick. This entire thing was a trick to emphasize the point that unless you do digital simulations, you may land up in problems on a project. Anyway, we must say thanks very much to both of you young ladies. Thanks to Leena for leading this team, to Milind for coordinating, to Rajesh for all the inspiration, to our support from Rupa and the Future of Design, and support from the sponsors. I'd like to just end with a small message. We have made a small beginning in this new way of learning. We hope this will enlighten us to reinvent ourselves quickly, devise new work styles and ways of working, perhaps entrepreneurship, definitely collaboration, not just to survive, but to grow exponentially. Thanks to the enlightenment by the team, Studio Emergence with Sija Sudhakaran and Khushbu Dauda. We appreciate your participation, all of you, in this first series, and we'll keep you posted on events and programs to follow. Thank you. Thank you for your support, and good night.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so
much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Bye, Milan. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.